Hey guys, this is Eric Weingarten with Weingarten Racing. I thought I would do an update on these Edelbrock Performer RPM 440 heads. And what I mean by that is, for those that haven't watched, I did an initial video about these heads and how much they flow from the factory with their bad chambers and stuff. Well, the customer asked me just to do some, minor work. He wanted me pretty much to freshen up the heads and do just a little bit of blending, which I have. So what I did was I did a 5-angle valve job, and this isn't my most aggressive 45-degree valve job, so they both, by the way, have 45. This has more of aggressive radius on the exhaust than it did before, but this isn't my most aggressive 45-degree valve job, but it's a good one. I use it on a lot of my stuff that's street strip things. But anyway, redid the valve job, and I blended it in. I really didn't make the bowls that much bigger, maybe 1% bigger if I remember right from my notes. The throat was already kind of big at 91%, so I kept it there. And the throat thing is throwing people off, and I don't know if I'm explaining it right. 90% is what you can do. For you. Most of you could do 90%, and you're probably not going to mess up the head. If you want to do 91%, it doesn't necessarily flow more. It does if it depends on the valve job you put in it. So in other words, if I kept the stock one that was on there, it was already 91%. But if you did, say, a factory GM or maybe even some of these heads, and you put a 91% on it, you probably made it flow worse. So it's not, the throat doesn't necessarily flow more unless you've got the valve job that matches it. And what I mean by that is not just the 45, it's the angles underneath. Because what it'll do is it'll make the throat larger because it's actually moving material out, and it makes the radius better. Instead of having it pushed this way, it's pushed more down. You can get wider area in here, and you can go 91%. And then in that case, it does flow more. You can also go up as well, but of course, I have a video about people going too far. Now, so just for that. So pretty much everything here you guys can essentially do, because what I've done was, well, you can't do. Have your machine shop that's got a good 5-angle valve job, put one on there. Do that, and then a nice radius on the exhaust. There's your basics. And then you're just gonna blend it in. It was already 91%, so you're not gonna make the throat any larger. You're gonna blend it in. You're gonna make your bowl just about 1% bigger. And then this is the only other thing that's been done. I did this because if you get the factory ones, this really is not much at all. The factory leaves these gashes here, and I just blended those in. I don't really think it helped airflow on the intake side so much, but on the exhaust side, it for sure did. Let me flip this. Because on the exhaust side, it had it like angled in like so. So it was blocking the airflow coming out. So it was doing this weird thing where it come this way than there. So getting rid of that probably helped more on the exhaust side than it did the intake. So did that. And the other change, and this is probably the bigger one, is this, because it's going to change the flow numbers, which you're about to see. I put a back cut on the valves. So this is where it sits on the head right here. This is your seat angle. This is the back cut. This is the 30 degree, nothing fancy. And you can see it's a slightly wider than the seat angle. That's about it. You don't put one on the exhaust. And here are what the numbers are. Let me block the customer's name here. There we go. All right. This is the stock on a 4310 bore. And yes, I know there's different bore sizes. I think they're 4320 or whatever for the Mopar. This just happens to be the bore size that I have that's closest to it. So this is stock, intake and exhaust. This is after the modifications. So if we look at 100, it gained quite a bit. 200, it gained quite a bit. 300, it gained almost 16. It gained quite a bit. Gained about 11 there at 5, at 6. That's where it's peaking. It's about 9 better. And then it actually is worse than it was stock. And the reason for that is when you put a back cut on a valve, it will make it flow better down low for sure, but it hurts the peak flow. So that's part of the reason why this flow at the top isn't still gaining and isn't climbing and isn't as good as it was stock, although it's not that much of a difference, like 87 to an 84, 3 CFM. That's part of it. The other part is because I made the valve job move more air here, really need more bowl work. I mean, not bowl work, but short side work, which I didn't do. I didn't lay back the short side or any of that. Just basic work being done. However, the guy is only going to run a 600 lift cam. And yes, I do prefer if it keeps flowing all the way through, even if you're running a 600 lift cam. This is where the majority of where his load will be. And I think he's going to be pretty happy. Any gains you can make as far as airflow on this head, because it's so underflowed for the size of the motor, is a win. So there's that. Here's the exhaust. The exhaust, I think, was pretty much better everywhere. Really strong number there. pretty decent. You could tell it gained a bunch. Only gained a few there, 3 to an 8. So it's 5, but it's pretty good pickups. So peak even picked up. There was no spot where this lost on the exhaust. So it was a good gain. So there's your little thing about that. Now I do want to address one other thing. If you look at the deck surface, because I did surface these, it took 5,000 to clean it up. It looks pretty good. But I don't know if you guys have ever heard me talk about it, because you know, I've got a lot of videos, so I'm not saying you've got to watch every one, but if you had, you might have seen me talk about whenever you have this pepper in the deck. And what it is there's porosity and it makes the casting weaker. This is a prime example. You can't see it right now, can you? Now you can. That's not because a piston blew up. That's not because something went wrong mechanically after. This is because of the way they were cast. There's these little voids that are throughout the whole entire deck. Everywhere. The camera's doing a... Anywhere you see a pit, that's where it's at. Even these little ones here that look kind of gray, nope. And I know you're thinking, can't you just mill it out? No, it's through the entire casting. So let's say I surface more again, I'm just gonna find more of this underneath. So you can be chasing your tail. This is an example what I mean when the casting quality is not the greatest. And this is it. This is pepper. So if you ever see this in your deck, after it's been surfaced, the casting itself is weaker. You can think of it like a sponge with a bunch of holes in it. It's easy to break it. So, not that this will break, but it's just definitely not as strong as not seeing this. So, hopefully I've given you some information on this 440 Mopar head. You guys, take care.